Hey everyone, and welcome to Pixels, a show where we talk about video games. Imagine that. That's incredible and interesting. At least we try to make it interesting. It's been an interesting week for me. I'm going to do this show solo because my son was sick. And when that happens, those who have children know that everything becomes completely unmanageable. And now we are preparing for our trip to Japan. We're going to be spending a week in Japan. Hopefully, if all goes well, if we don't get sick and stopped at the airport for fear of some strange virus. We don't have a fever or anything like that, so we should be okay. But it means that the week is crazy. And this show is late. And so we're going to be doing that in that crazy mode. But there are some super interesting bits of news. News from Microsoft, reports from Sony. GeForce Now is having issues and a bunch of other things. So let's get right into it. I am Patrick Beja, and I'm really happy that you're listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. With first, the news dump from Microsoft. It's kind of a slow burn on news from the next generation. It feels like some kind of Mexican announcement standoff, or rather announcement Mexican standoff between Sony and Microsoft. None of them want to give enough information so that the other can react, and still they need to inform the public. So it's like this little drip from Microsoft's side. And Sony, we feel, is waiting. And there might be a reason for that. It wouldn't be surprising by everyone's estimation that the core issue there is the price of the units. Both the cost, because they are quite powerful and require a lot more manufacturing cost and expertise than the previous generation. And the price, of course, which is the key component in any product release, especially on the console side. So we'll get to the price concerning PlayStation specifically in a second. But Microsoft has made a bunch of announcements, confirmed the power of the Xbox Series X, which is 12 teraflops, which is a little bit higher, I believe, or around the same numbers as the Nvidia 2080 GPU. The reason I'm not putting too much importance on the comparison between the console power numbers and the PC cards equivalents is that they don't mean a lot because the consoles are very optimized. And if you don't know, the previous generation or the current generation, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, actually have, by PC standards, pretty weak CPU and GPUs. They were fairly cheap when they were released, kind of underpowered, and still the console graphics managed to be roughly equivalent to that of PC. Now, PC gamers are going to take issue with that statement. Of course, it's not as good, especially towards the end of the generation. But I would say until ray tracing became a thing a year ago on PC, consoles were pretty much on par with what was happening on PC. Pretty much. Like, you would need to be a fairly big geek to notice the difference. So that's why I'm not doing a direct comparison between the two, but 12 teraflops being on the top end of what's possible on PC now means that on consoles, it's going to be significantly more powerful and more graphically intensive looks than on the previous generation, at least. So that's good to know. Of course, confirmation that there is hardware ray tracing, that it was almost a given. And a couple of other little tidbits on the graphics side. That's, for those who keep count, twice the power of the Xbox One X, which is currently the most powerful console on the market. There's going to be support for 8K and 120 hertz and a bunch of other things through HDMI, which enable the console to tell the TV that it wants low latency, fast response rate, and the TV will adapt, stuff like that, which is pretty cool, but kind of quality of life improvements. The big feature. Oh, the other one, multi-game resume, so you can pause them and you will resume your game on more than one game, which is the quick resume is the current feature just for one game. But the even more interesting thing is the push that Microsoft is saying. I kind of buried the lead here. The push that Microsoft is doing on ecosystem, meaning the games you buy are for the Xbox ecosystem, not just for this one generation. So if you buy a game on Xbox One, you will automatically have the Xbox Series X version as well, which is, it's not that you get the same game you can play on the next generation console through backwards compatibility. You get the version that was specifically designed for that next generation. So that's a little bit of a difference, because we've seen in previous generations, especially this last one, games that were developed for the previous generation and then improved significantly for the next one, and you had to buy it again if you wanted to play it again. I think most notably the Last of Us game is one that comes to mind that many people bought again on PlayStation. And Microsoft is tracing a line in the sand, and they're saying it's going to be for Microsoft Game Studios games, which is a number of them, but they will also encourage third-party developers to do the same. And CD Projekt Red has already announced that it will be the case for Cyberpunk 2077. Of course, this is a feature that is especially useful on that period of transition, because that's when the next consoles are going to be coming out. Maybe you don't want to buy one immediately, but you can purchase the game without fear of being, losing it when you upgrade your console. So it is a great incentive for people to join the Xbox ecosystem. And it's something that is incredibly consumer friendly, which is born from that competition. I believe they're doing it because it's a new way of thinking about their service. They're thinking about service more than device, but it's pushing the entire industry in the right direction. And it will be difficult not only for other third-party developers to not adopt that feature if more and more of them do it, because you really look like the bad guy. Some don't care. I'm sure I think some will offer a small upgrade fee, as they have in the previous generation. It's happened that you pay 10 extra bucks and you get the new version as well. I think that will still happen. But it is not going to be the standard, I don't think. So we'll see there. And not only will it push the third-party developers to do it, it will also push Sony to do that as well. I believe when they finally announce something about the PlayStation 5, other than the name and logo, I think they have to follow suit, because if they don't, it is a significant competitive disadvantage, and they look like the bad guys. If you have to buy the wonderful exclusive games that Sony is putting out for PlayStation 4, but then in 6 months when you get your PlayStation 5, you can only play them in PlayStation 4 version, and there's the shiny, higher resolution, better textures, ray tracing PlayStation 5 version that's right next to you, and you can't get it because you made the dumb mistake of buying it 6 months ago. That would be an issue. So I think they're going to have to announce a similar feature. And announcing similar features and announcing competitive pricing is, I think, one of the reasons why Sony is trying to wait as long as possible. I think they're reaching the limit of the player's patience with all of this. I think now, with every week or month that goes by, Microsoft is looking better and better, because they're giving us some cool stuff to look forward to. And it was cute for a long time for Sony to enjoy its lead, but I think now it's going to only now start to affect it a little bit negatively, or rather, it's a loss of opportunity, I suppose. And I think they can regain it, of course, as soon as they make a big announcement with with their PlayStation 5 features, if they are satisfactory. But it makes it this not significantly, but a little bit more difficult as time goes by. They are starting to leave a free hands and avenue to Microsoft, which I'm sensing in a completely empiric manner, the sentiment of the gaming population shifting towards Microsoft. And it seems that from the reports we're getting, the big issue there is that Sony isn't sure what their price is going to be, because the console, as we mentioned, is going to be quite expensive. I believe the estimated cost is $450 American dollars. On PlayStation 4, they made $20 per console, but that's unusual. I've seen a lot of people reference that data point and saying, oh, they made money, and Nintendo actually always makes money on every console they sell. But that is almost an anomaly. Usually the way it works in this industry is that the consoles themselves are loss leaders, and the manufacturers lose a little bit of money on the consoles, which they recoup on games and licensing fees. So that, I think, it wouldn't be incredibly surprising for Sony to put up a price of $450, and obviously, since that's just the manufacturing cost, they would be losing a little bit of money. And that wouldn't surprise me a lot, especially since 450 is still a little bit higher than the sweet spot of 399 for those who for the PlayStation 4 when it launched, which was the right price at the launch of a console, I think, and that's what the market has shown. So 450, if they have good arguments, I think it could work. I think 499 would be a mistake, depending, of course, and that's the big question mark on what Microsoft does, because they have said that the Series X is going to be expensive. I guess at this point we're expecting it to be over $500, which is very expensive. But we're also expecting it to be, or at least I'm expecting there to be the Xbox Series S. I think everyone agrees that's probably going to happen, which is going to be cheaper and probably is going to be maybe $299 even, or $349. So Sony is going to be in an interesting situation, and it's going to have to decide: we're going to have to be between the two. But there, the pricing becomes interesting. And again, I think that's the thing they're keeping close to their vests, both of them, and the thing they're waiting for the other one to make clear before they go at it themselves. So I don't know. As I said, Sony has enjoyed a lead in the sentiment in the gaming community for this generation, but I sense that lead is eroding now. So they could wait and just say, we'll show up when we show up. And now they're going to have to start. I mean, obviously, we're going to see something at or before E3, so it's only about 3 months or so they can still wait 3 months, but it has to happen, and as time goes on, they can't afford to have a miss there. You can never afford to have a miss there, but Microsoft has shown us so much and so many cool things that if Sony doesn't stick the landing rather, the backlash is going to be stronger. I guess that's a good way of putting it. They've waited so long and they've been so stingy with the details. We've had time to rally around Microsoft. And if Sony doesn't stick that landing, the backlash is going to be easier to get out of hand, and it's going to be, but Microsoft does this and that, and you don't even, give us this. So I think they've learned their lesson from the PlayStation 3, and they're not going to have an excess of hubris like they did back then. But we'll see. So hopefully it will happen fairly soon. Oh, and another tidbit. The coronavirus, according to one analyst firm, TrendForce, the coronavirus should not affect the next-gen console production, mostly. The issue of price and getting some GDDR RAM is still a very big problem because everything needs that kind of RAM now, smartphones, and there are so many of them, and all of those devices. And so they're difficult to come by. And the next-gen consoles, especially with SSDs and all of that, are they would be difficult to put together and expensive to put together no matter what. But it seems the coronavirus is going to affect a lot of production in tech, but not so much the gaming consoles, the next-generation gaming consoles. So I guess that's reassuring for our hobby in a world where everything is crazy. Let's talk a little bit about GeForce Now, which lost. So GeForce Now launched 2-3 weeks ago, and it's a pretty cool service. A little bit janky on the UI side, as I said. Lots of great things. It works as a service, period. But Activision Blizzard has pulled their games from the service. Essentially, it's a little bit murky on why and what happened, but what I could discern, my understanding from everything we've seen, was that Activision Blizzard was working with Nvidia on the service when it was in beta, and my guess is that they had told Nvidia, before you launch, let us know, because we need to hammer out a deal, a licensing deal probably, or they want to, if it's a commercial service, they want to have more thought put into it. And Nvidia apparently didn't understand that or pushed without it just to show that it could work. Who knows? But now they have taken them away from the service, so they're not available on GeForce Now anymore. No Activision Blizzard game is available on the GeForce Now service. And now we've learned that Bethesda Softworks has also pulled their games. I think they left Wolfenstein Youngblood, but everything else is off the service. So this might seem like a bad sign for streaming games. I think it's actually a really good sign. Even though Stadia, I canceled my Stadia subscription, by the way. It's just as lackluster as I expected the service to be in its implementation, even though I absolutely love the technical aspects. As lackluster as I expected it to be, I didn't expect it to be that borked, and Google has exceeded my expectations there. But I still believe in the service very much when it, quote unquote, really launches, when the free version launches as well. I think they've gone back into underground submarine mode, and they're going to be working on that a little bit more seriously, and we'll see it emerge in a few months, maybe a year now. I thought we would hear sooner, but the fact that they didn't offer extra months to founders is what is making me think they're kind of going into, we borked it, we're going to improve it seriously, and we'll relaunch kind of for the free launch, for the relaunch. This is definitely a long-term beta, I think. We'll see, though. It might come sooner than expected, but I don't think we'll see anything change before, at least the middle of the year. And so, yeah, what that means to me is that the game streaming future is happening, and they're all thinking about, we all know it's happening, but it's getting serious. Not that it's, no one wants it and it's borked and it doesn't work. I think it's the opposite. I think it's getting serious, and all of those companies are starting to think about how they want to approach that aspect of the industry. They're thinking about how the licensing is going to work. They're thinking about how their strategy is going to work. Maybe some of them are going to use Google, actually, as I mentioned many times when we first heard about them, that Google also wants to sell the service as a white box service for other companies. It might be that Bethesda or Activision Blizzard or Others are thinking maybe we should have our own streaming service, which leverages Google or Microsoft or Amazon technology. And that is, I think, what is happening. So it's not going to coalesce right away. It might take a few months, maybe a couple of years. But that's how I'm reading the situation. So a streaming service, Battle.net, or a Bethesda streaming service is absolutely possible. And of course, there are going to be people who complain about having a million launchers and a million different services. This is not like, well, first of all, they're all available everywhere. So it's not the same as being present on multiple platforms. You just need to be available on one, and everyone has access to it. So it's not like being on PlayStation and Xbox. It's a little bit different. Of course, if you have people who subscribe to one service, you might want to navigate that in the same way that TV shows navigate streaming services. It's possible. But if, let's say, Activision Blizzard launches a streaming service with or without a subscription, it doesn't matter. Maybe they say, you own Overwatch. Well, you own Overwatch. You can now stream it from anywhere that has a good connection with your Battle.net client. That's it. You don't need any, and in that case, they don't need to be present on other launchers or systems because it's already available everywhere, especially if they create a UI for Apple TV and other TV boxes and an app that does the same thing and stuff like that. So it will be the launcher situation on every device. Again, meaning some people complain about having more than one launcher on PC, but it's a minor inconvenience compared to not having the games available at all. So you could have all of those games available on your TV without the need for a console or a specific device. So that's a pretty big change. So yeah, anyway, I don't know if I made myself clear on that strategy. I'm a little bit tired and sick, but the gist of it is they're all thinking about it, and we might see those decisions emerge in the next few months. Bad news for GeForce, though, and especially the fact that the UI is so welded together in an approximate manner. I think long term, I'm not sure that service is going to be the prime choice unless they find some kind of partnership. They did, Cyberpunk is going to be on it, but CD Projekt Red already has a partnership with Nvidia anyway, and so I think that is not as significant as some people might think. Although Cyberpunk is going to be everywhere. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's also on Stadia and xCloud and stuff like that. But I mean, in the current state of things, when Cyberpunk releases and you don't have an RTX super powerful gaming rig, you'll be able to play it if you buy it on Steam or whatever platform, which is available on GeForce Now as well. You can play it at home with your computer, and then you can also play it in the best version it can be with the RTX ray tracing graphic cards through the streaming service. So yeah, that is a little bit significant, but I don't think it's going to make or break the service. We got some E3 news, and the slow demise of that conference, of that show, is being confirmed. Jeff Keighley mentioned he wasn't going to be there for the E3 Coliseum with a message that was like, essentially, they're going in a direction that I don't like. He was very polite and very diplomatic, as Keighley is known to be. But he was being a little bit not dismissive, but like, I don't think they're making the right choices is what it came down to. And more importantly, he's not going there, so he's estimating that it's not necessary for his career image. It's not as important as other things he's having the opportunity to do. Maybe he's going to host a PlayStation thing. Who knows? Maybe he's still going to be around E3, but not for the ESA that does E3. He's also going to be at Gamescom for their launch thing, which was, pretty cool last year. So he's still doing stuff, but Not at E3. And I don't think E3 is going to go away. I think it's still going to be a major moment in the gaming industry, even down the line. It's always going to be, just like CES still happens, even though, big companies like Apple and actually Samsung is still there around it, but a few companies have their own events. I think it didn't kill CES, but I think the E3, E3 is going to be in the same mode. There are still a ton of smaller companies that cannot afford to have their own event. I mean, they could have a streaming announcement or something, but there's not enough attention on them for it to warrant it as a strategy. So they still need the big gathering that E3 is going to be, even without Sony and Keeley and maybe a few others that might pull out. So Microsoft is still there as well, in technically, because they have their Microsoft Theater, but it's still going to be a focal point, maybe less than before, of course, but I think it's still going to be a focal point. Still, it's gotten it's in a worse groove than it was, and then I thought it was going to be a few months ago. Sony pulling out as well is definitely more of a blow than I thought. So the trend is not going great for E3. The coronavirus is GDC. A few companies pulled out, but it's still happening. I don't think coronavirus is going to be impacting E3, but boy, if they still... Normally, the flu season is from October to June, so it should be tapering off towards the end of the fall, the spring. But who knows? We don't know exactly how the coronavirus works, and it might happen that it affects it beyond this. But if there are still coronavirus concerns around E3, that would be... Boy, that's like... I mean, it's mostly online anyway, but it would be yet another thing that poor ESA has to contend with. It's unlikely, though. But yeah, GDC is still happening, but Kojima Productions, I think Sony has pulled out. Facebook and Oculus have pulled out, so it's affecting everything. All right, we have another few tidbits of news, but I do want to talk about the games I've played before my son got sick. So I played a little bit of Yakuza Kiwami, which is really fun. I'm really liking the series. I didn't expect it to be as narrative driven, and I can completely get how it's become a niche cult classic, that series. I mean, in Japan it's super popular, but in the West it's less well known. It's getting a little bit better known now with the spread of those versions of Yakuza and Kiwami, which is the remake for the first and second one, and it's also available on the Xbox Game Pass, is it now? Or at least on the Xbox, period. So it's very narrative driven, and the open world aspect, you can almost skip it entirely, at least for the little bit that I've seen. I haven't had big power issues when I skip the side quest aspect of things. So it's a fun game. I wish I had more time to put into it. It's quite long, though, so I don't think I'll be able to finish it. But yeah, Yakuza is a thing, and the seventh one is going to come to the West, I think, this year. So I'll be keeping my eye out for that one. I played TemTem, the Pokemon thing on PC, and I was like, oh, this is cute. Maybe that will be my my opportunity to get into a Pokemon-like thing finally, and I really was looking forward to it, and I bought it, and boy, after about half an hour, I hated it so much that I just, for the first time in my life, asked for a refund. It's been like 2 or 3 weeks, and I haven't heard back from Steam. They don't want to pay me back, I guess, but maybe it takes that long. I don't know, but wow, it is not a game for me. Lots of people enjoying it. There are even, additional content coming, and the early access is going well. But wow, I never noped out of a game as quickly as this one, I don't think. It's weird because I was really trying to get into it, but yeah, I guess Pokemon is definitely not for me. I'll keep trying, maybe one day, once a version of that thing evolves a little bit. By the way, if you like Nintendo franchises that you think should come on PC but don't, and you like Pokemon TemTem might be for you. If you like Animal Crossing, what's it called? There's another game also in early access, I believe. Hoko Life is also coming to Steam and looks very much like Animal Crossing. So if you want your fix before New Horizons comes out on Switch, then maybe you can try that one, Hoko Life. And I also played Scourgebringer. It is so cool. That one I really like. It's on Game Pass on PC, and it is early access, but it's essentially Celeste with fighting. And it's a roguelite that is, pixel graphics, retro style, and but it really works. It's each level is, so you start and you have like one screen with enemies that appear, and you jump and start slashing, and when you slash, you stay in place in the geometry, the verticality of the level, and then you can dash and do a heavy blow to stun the bigger enemies, and slash again, and you dash again. It is like an aerial ballet of death in pixel art. It is really cool. I really like it. It's the kind of game that you get. It's very fast paced, the kind of game you have to get in the zone of, but it works completely. Like the promise of having a Battle Celeste is completely fulfilled. So it's a mix between Celeste and, let's say, Dark Souls. Not Dark Souls, sorry. Dead Cells. D and S, both games. But yeah, it completely works. I really like it. It's Scourgebringer, and it's only on PC now. I think it might be on not just on the Xbox Game Pass. You can buy it as well. But that game on Switch is going to be perfect once it comes out. So those are the games I played. And then there's a few additional tidbits of news. There's a LinkedIn profile of, what's his face? The head of, wait, I'm going to find his name, because that is how professionals do it. Although I can't find his name in this article. There you go. Nick Van Dyck, the president of Activision Blizzard licensing, something like that. He posted an update to his LinkedIn page, and he is working on a series for a Netflix series for Overwatch and a Netflix series for Diablo, which is kind of expected and kind of finally. And the one is comics, anime style. One is just comic style. It makes a lot of sense. I have a little bit of trepidation about it. I want it to be good, and everyone always says, "Oh, Blizzard should make long form entertainment and series and stuff like that." I agree, but it's very different to make a 3 minutes cutscene and an actual 10 episodes series. And if they externalize the writing and that part of it, so first of all, it's very difficult to go from short trailer, essentially extended trailer, to full-on storytelling. And maybe they can do it. They do it in some of their games, a little bit less well in others, but it's not a guarantee. It's not because the cutscenes and the trailers are great that they can make a great 10-episode series. And the other thing is, if they give it out to someone else, that's also kind of a gamble. So I want to see it. I'm happy that it's happening, but I'm a little bit anxious about it still. BioWare has announced officially that it is redesigning Anthem, and we kind of knew it was happening, but they've said they are reworking the fundamentals of the game, which, hallelujah. I'm actually excited about this because Anthem had such a fun promise. It is such a terrible realization of that promise, but I think it can work, and it's not going to happen now. The way it's going to happen is still unclear. Are we going to need to buy it again or buy an expansion? I guess they can't do that if they want to. If they don't want, gamers to go to their offices and burn them. But it's we'll see. I'm happy that they haven't abandoned, that they're confirming they haven't abandoned it, and that it's still in the works. And finally, we got some news about Project A, the FPS from Riot Games. It seems to be very much CSGO and very little Overwatch, which makes sense. That is the ethos that Riot seems to go after in League of Legends, but also in Legends of Runeterra and, their card game. And it would make a lot of sense for them to go after a more competitive, hardcore audience that they want to serve extremely well. Unlike Blizzard, which tries to widen the appeal of the style of games they create, which has always been the case, by the way. There are people lamenting the fact that, Blizzard is going too casual, but they ignore what Blizzard actually is and what they have always done. They have joined Blizzard at a certain point of their history and have thought that this was what Blizzard should be forever, where Blizzard really has always tried to extend the appeal of games and make them easy to get into. Of course, there's always a lot of strategy and a lot of deep mastering happening, obviously, but the entire career of Blizzard has been make games more accessible. And it was the case for World of Warcraft, which a lot of Blizzard gamers joined and became Blizzard gamers at that point. And they don't remember. They think, we need hardcore aspects of the game like it was in Classic. They don't remember that Classic was incredibly casual compared to MMOs at the time. And it was criticized for that at that point. So it's just funny that there's still this sentiment happening. But anyway, the tangent on Blizzard notwithstanding, it makes a lot of sense for Riot to go after that market because they have shown, and that category of gamers, because they have shown that with an uncompromising design for League of Legends, they can attract a very faithful and numerous, a large community of gamers. So having a hardcore philosophy design doesn't mean that you're going to restrict and limit your reach, and it can still be extremely successful. So I think that's what they're going after for Project A as well. And they're going after the CSGO crowd, which is a little bit... Well, CSGO is still a huge game, a very successful game to this day. It's very old, but very successful. But it's ripe for disruption, I guess. And the estimation is that it will probably go after those players and not so much about after the Overwatch crowd, which we weren't sure of because the first images we had seen of Project A showed a little bit of an emphasis on the powers and on the hero shooter aspect of it. But it seems that's not the focus of it. I guess there are a few other tidbits. Facebook is buying more studios for Oculus. They bought Sanzar Games, which made Asgard's Wrath. So yeah, VR. They're still being active in VR. Star Citizen had a record-breaking year in crowdfunding, which still blows my mind every time that happens. Half-Life Alyx will be available March 23rd. Talking about VR, so we have a date for that. The No Man's Sky is still getting major updates. Again, I can't believe, like, they have done so well. Like, if you want to see a redemption story for a studio, I think Hello Games is the poster child for that. There's a Borderlands movie happening, so that's pretty cool. And Sonic, talking about movies, Sonic has been very successful, which, again, I didn't expect, but it seems that people liked it. I had an opportunity to go see it, and then I remembered I hate Jim Carrey, and I'm not so much of a Sonic fan. So maybe I'll see it at some point. Maybe in the plane it will be showing, and I'll watch it then. Rainbow Six Siege, it should be available for PS5 and Xbox Series X at launch, which I think is a genius move on Ubisoft's part. They have made a game that is very popular and over time became super like the community was very active. But I think that a lot of people are looking at it and thinking, "Oh, is it a good idea to get into it now? And should I buy it now? It's been out for so long." But when the new consoles launch, you're hungry for new stuff, and that thing that you already know is very popular and very cool. I think it's going to see an uptick when you want some quick, cheap, but still good launch titles and references when you just bought your console. I think this is going to be a really strong move for Ubisoft on the next generation. So yeah, there's more New Horizons news from the Nintendo Direct, which honestly, it's kind of very detailed, so I'm not going to get into them. And I guess that's about it. Yeah, let's call it a day. I'm tired and sick and have stuff to do and a Phileas Club to record in a couple of hours. So I'm going to go and take a shower and then have some food. Too much detail? Maybe. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my little rants. Since this show was late, the next one is not going to be next week. Obviously, I'm going to be in Japan. So we're going to delay it to the next episode. So it's going to be a couple of weeks. But we'll be close to the release of New Horizons and Doom. That's going to be funny as well. And when is that going to be? I don't know. We'll see. Follow me on Instagram. I've been doing stuff on Instagram, and of course, the Japan trip is going to be chronicled on Instagram as well. So check that out and go comment at frenchspin.com if you want to do that. And I'm sure you do want to do it because I'm sure I said some pretty dumb stuff on this episode, as I want to do. And yeah, Not Patrick on Instagram, also on Twitter. And I'll talk to you in a few weeks. Oh, last thing. If you have super geeky, nerdy advice about things to do in Tokyo, I'll obviously go to Akihabara, not for the electronics, because that's not what you do there, but for the retro gaming stuff, Super Potato, stuff like that. So I haven't been to Tokyo. I've lived there for a few years, and I've been on a regular basis, but haven't been in a few years. If you have some advice for recent stuff and recommendations, please let me know. That would be very welcome. All right. Now I'm really gone. Bye.